Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So off of everybody else's project. Yeah.
All right. We're gonna call this meeting back to order. And we have a delegation from BC Hydro coming in. Perfect. Hey. Good afternoon. There you are. Thank you so much for being here. We have Whitney Dean, Stakeholder Engagement, and Jim Shepherd, Manager of Capital Projects from BC Hydro, here to talk to us about Bridge River Valley capital projects. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. And I'd encourage you to leave some time for questions at the end, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Sure. So thank you everyone for giving us the time. My name is Whitney Dean with Community Relations and Stakeholder Engagement for Capital Projects in the Bridge River and Sea to Sky region. With me is Jim Shepherd, Manager of Capital Projects. And I'm not seeing the slides up, but if we can just go to the next slide, because I do want to take a moment just to acknowledge some of the efforts for this summer. So take a moment to acknowledge the incredible effort in response to the Casper Creek and Downton wildfires performed by BC Wildfire Services, Shalath Nation, Squamish-Lillooet Regional District's Protective Services, BC Hydro's Emergency Management Team, as well as operations and transmission crews on the ground, elected officials and residents. And I want to thank everyone. Our thoughts are with you, as I know there's still many recovery efforts going on. So we'll go to the next slide. And just for the agenda today, we'll be covering the Bridge River System overview, capital plan update, First Nations consultation, workforce forecast update, access and accommodation studies, an update there, and then our communications as well and how we communicate on our projects. So this time, I'm going to send it over to Jim Shepherd.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So we've done this before, but this is our Bridge River System. Sort of the areas to take a look at are, we're going to discuss some about Joy Dam, the Bridge 1 powerhouse, and the Seton Dam and powerhouse. You could go on to the next slide, please. Okay, this is the work that we're doing over at Seton. What we're doing right now is we're looking at bypassing the current the unit right now. And that's just for a couple of reasons. One of them is to give us an alternative way to move water around the facility. It also reduces risk to fish and fish habitat. You're really going to see, because of this, you're going to see a lot of, in fact, this is actually a great drone photo. I'm just so happy we have drones now to take these great pictures. But you're going to see a lot of increased construction traffic, mostly on the Duffy Lake Road, the Rochard Road, and the Powerhouse Road, and that is to support this construction. There also is probably going to be a construction camp in Lillooet at this time, but the location is currently unknown, and this is part of the accommodations information that Whitney will be talking about later on. There could be some potential daily traffic and construction workers to and from the Terzaghi Dam on Highway 40 for another construction. We've also got a lot of equipment that's going to be moved around the next little while. Right now, the targeted completion is 2027. I think we're talking about doing this sometime in 2025, 26. I go next slide, please. And you can sort of see where it goes. We're creating a tunnel that sort of goes from that one little area around the box culvert all the way down into the Fraser River. Next slide, please. I've done a bunch of geotechnical research and some drilling in that fall. And we're going to keep on doing some assessment about environmental and archaeological assessments. So you'll probably see some crews and equipment that are going to be around the area. Next slide, please. The Joy is going to be the biggest project that we're going to be doing. And this is just a dam safety project. It'll address the safety risks related to this older dam. This actually goes to the BC Utilities Commission, and we're probably going to start construction in 2027, finishing up in 2032. I think we've showed pictures before, but we're really going to have to draw down the reservoir really low so we can get at the toe of the dam. Next slide, please. We've done some geotechnical work on the dam itself. They've got 9 drill holes, and these are all holes downstream of the dam crest. They put some PVC casings in so they can take a look at them in the future, and we'll be taking a look at the cores in the future. Again, the LaJoy Access and Accommodation Study, and Whitney will go through that a little further on this presentation, and some more design work and environmental studies. Next slide, please. This is a project that's currently ongoing. This is for Bridge 1 to 4. This actually went through the BC Utilities Commission and was approved. Construction is going to start in 2026. Right now, we are finalizing negotiations for the contract for the supply of the equipment that'll be needed for this project. And we completed all the environmental and archaeological assessments in the fall of this year. Next slide, please. These are just the penstock and the foundation projects. These are sort of concurrent going along with the Bridge 1 project. We're just going to make sure, given that we're fixing the generators, that the penstocks are also fully up to where they need to be. Next slide, please. This is another one you'll probably see a lot more, especially if you're going over to Shalloth or Seton Portage. We're doing some work on the dam spillway chute access, and this is basically there to prevent, we're seeing a lot of rockfall going into the spillway, and we can't actually go into the spillway safely because we're afraid of rocks coming down. So we're going to be stabilizing the slope just above that that spillway and and reduce the rockfall. This one was also affected by the Casper Creek wildfire. I guess it burnt up a lot of the trees around this area, and it's actually destabilized that slope. So we're actually going to take a look at that too when we're doing the design for this project. And there's going to be some rock stabilization over the tunnel that goes through for the road for Terzaghi. So that'll actually affect road usage, but we're going to sequence that so we're not going to really affect it that much. And this one's going to start in 2026 and go to 2027. And the low-level discharge, that's actually in its very early stages, and it's going to be completed in 2030. Next slide. The transmission line, this is another one that you'll see probably pretty, what am I going to say? It's going to be pretty obvious because there's going to be a lot of helicopters and other flights and other types of equipment that'll be going along. Right now, we are just doing the archaeological investigation. We should be finished that next spring, and we'll be finished that project in 2028. We were also going to do a project over at the BRT, the Bridge River Transformer T4 replacement, but that actually was affected by the wildfires, so it's going to be delayed until next year. Next slide. This one I pass on to Whitney.
Yeah, and so any of their capital project work involves consultation with First Nations. So the Bridge River system is located entirely in Statliam Nation territory, and Statliam BC Hydro and the province signed an agreement that addressed past impacts and provides a framework for creating a new, more positive relationship into the future. And then as these projects move forward, we're collaborating at various levels to have a better understanding, integrate Statliam perspectives and interests into our planning, and then identify meaningful economic and employment opportunities across projects. Next slide. So this is our workforce forecast update. This one looks at this past year and then into next year. So about 40 workers were on site in the Bridge River region for 2023. Most of that work is completed this month. About 40 workers will be needed in the area for 2024, and most of that construction is expected to happen between April and September of next year. Workers have been staying at existing facilities in Shalloth and Seton Portage. That's expected for next year as well, so no additional accommodations are required for 2024. Next slide. A lot of our efforts been focused in on our access and accommodation studies for this year. So as a reminder, in the Bridge River region, There's two studies going on, one for LaJoy and the other for encompassing the Bridge River capital projects that are happening at Bridge, Terzaghi, and Seton. So we're studying access and transportation, worker accommodation, and potential socioeconomic impacts and mitigation options. So this is a chance for people to understand how our work is done and work to find some solutions as well. Phase 1 of our engagement is complete. Phase 2 is underway. We've done some stakeholder meetings with elected officials. We're planning public open houses and an online survey for the public as well. That's going to be towards the end of January 2024. With the wildfires, we are putting the expected study completion by summer 2024 because there were some delays because of that. But if it's done earlier, we'll roll it out earlier. Next slide. And then for communications, so local ads, open houses like the ones we've done in June and we'll be doing in January, our biannual newsletter for those who received it, delegations to local governments like this one, bchydro.com/Bridge River is also another resource. And you can also email projects@bchydro.com. The phone number is there as well. For many of you, you know how to contact me as well to find any updates or ask any questions. And then this is the part, next slide, where we go to you for questions.
You nailed it in 10 minutes. Thank you. Question, Director Mack, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question, I guess, for Jim. We had an email from one of the fire department personnel in Squamish-Lillooet area, wondering if it's possible to put a fitment on the water system to allow the filling of tanker trucks and whatnot on Mission Mountain. He was just wondering why that had never been thought of, and I don't know if it's a pressure thing, but I'm sure there could be a pressure reduction valve put on there, but that would be an extremely valuable asset to have, because last year when we had that Casper Creek fire, in order to fill those tanks, they were either pumping out of a creek or going back down to the village where they could have been filling right up on the mountainside. So if you could just check into that, I would appreciate that. And you can let myself know, or Vivian Birch Jones, or Sal DeMare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Director Birch Jones, go ahead.
Thanks, Director Mack, and hey, Whitney and Jim, it's nice to see you. And of course, I'm sure you're doing this already, but with all those people and trucks coming and going, there'll be extra training for invasive species. I hope. I do not want to see Scotch broom brought into the territory. I just wanted to stress that.
Oh, no, absolutely. You know, the worst problems that we normally have with that are with our transmission lines, because we do actually disrupt a lot of ground. We are very, it's a good way of putting it, we're very cognizant of that. We have had issues on other projects, and we have a lot of protocols in place to make sure it doesn't happen. I've actually worked on 3 transmission line projects, so I really know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, good.
And
Thank
Vivian,
In our
we did have
case,
a
it was thistles.
Scotch broom is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
the Lillooet Naturalist Society helped us with some feedback for the access and accommodation studies. They've been definitely thinking about that, and we've had other feedback as well. So we've recorded that into the studies too. So
Great. Excellent.
You and go ahead.
Not so much a question, but just a comments. Thank you, Jim and Whitney, for the presentation. The tunnel at Terzaghi Dam, I've actually got some pictures of the rockfall that was right at the base of the entrance. And I know it's happened on both ends, so it's really good to see that you're being proactive of taking care of those issues there.
Okay, so we have used all.
Thank you.
For this. So thank you both for your update, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Almost close to on time. All right, our second delegation today is Maude Sear from Pemberton Youth and Children, Chair of Generation Project. And I will turn the floor over to you. You have 5 minutes for your presentation and 5 minutes for questions at the end.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I just want to let you know that my name is Maude Sear, and I'm presenting this project as a citizen and a mother and an educator. So here it is. So chair of the next generation, bringing hope to our children and youth. Next slide, please. So the context you all know, that there is scientific research in 2050 that's pretty dramatic, and a lot of people are very worried about it, and a lot of people to put their head in the sand. This is what we say in French, but I don't know if it makes sense in English. Mother, and if you are a parent, you probably worry about your children, and there is children also who's suffering of eco-anxiety. So instead of staying on my seat, I decided to go ahead for this project that I heard from Quebec. So yeah, so next slide, please. Okay, so the chair of the next generation represent and carry the voice of children. The chair of generation are painted by children and placed permanently around the table where decisions are made. This concrete symbol reminds leader that their future is shaped by the decision made today. It also allows the children who make it to express the creativity potential and influence the decision and action of adult in favor of substantial future. Next slide, please. Municipalities involved. The chair is referred officially to the municipal council with the children and youth. Here you see some pictures that are from Quebec. The chair that you saw earlier, there's a creation also from youth in Quebec. Youth and children have the opportunity to express their message and their expectation, their concern to elect official. Youth and children of today will become engaged citizens of tomorrow. This will be necessary because we all know that we will leave our children with a more difficult world, and co-anxiety is a reality in youth mental health. And trust me, I work in schools for 15 years, and this is the reality. This project allows these youth to recognize that we have a power to act. Next slide, please. So this is the person who started this initiative. It's Bruno Clément-Laberge, Chief of Staff for the Mayor Bruno Marchand in 2021. And what he says is the chair acts like a lighthouse. In the very busy time, it is easy to forget what and for whom we are in politics. Now, the chair is here to remind us of this. It's easy to lose sight of the consequences of our decision for future generation. All it takes is one elected official around the table who refer to the chair of the next generation. I think it happens more naturally because it's there in front of us. The chair facilitates the convergence of our ideas. It brings us back to the essentials. Next slide, please. So the chair of generation, it's in 73 Quebec municipalities. When I made this PowerPoint, which was last June, it was 73. Now it's 78. So it's going bigger and bigger. In municipalities, towns, village of district, Mère au Fond, it's called For Our Kids in English, team up with schools to transform a locally chair using recycled materials. For Our Kid is decentralized and diverse pan-Canadian movement that brings together mothers and grandmothers and everyone who wants to protect the future of children. Their actions are propelled by the desire to act on different front to protect future generation in the face of the climate emergency. Please, next slide. So expanding the project. On the sideline of municipal component of the project, Mère au Front are working to have a chair of generation to find their place in several decision-making places, such the National Assembly of Quebec and the Parliament of Ottawa. I'm planning to work towards expanding this project in British Columbia, starting with Pemberton and hopefully in the SLRD. Please, next slide. For what? So this is what the decision makes from local government. You all know pretty much. So that was mostly for parents because I present that to parents meeting in schools. So we can go on the next slide. Okay, so how can you be involved? First, set up an appointment with me and the youth to present officially the chair to all local government members, students, and citizens. To accept the chair in the municipal hall, actually your boardroom. 3, zoom out when you are in the process of making a decision. 4, look at the chair of the next generation. And 5, reassess and reorient to your discussion toward a substantial decision that will have a positive impact on the next generation. Please, thanks. Next slide. Okay, so what have been done, folks? So first I met in September the parents' school board, and I found parent volunteers who are willing to team up with me. And then there was the principal there, and the principal, their job was to find a teacher who are willing to lead the project with the children. And in stewardship, Pemberton apply grants. So I have grants already. I have $175. That's pretty cheap for the 2 chairs, because one for the municipal hall and one for the SLRD. In October, I connect with the teacher who's taking care of the leadership club with the grade 10, and also for the for your chair SLRD, it's going to be the resource 2 teacher from Signal Hill. She's going to recruit children from kindergarten to grade 7, and then paint the chair and have this conversation with them. November, I presented the project to the youth of the leadership club. They made a plan, brainstorm for the impactful creation for the look of the chair about environmental issue, reconciliation, and women empowerment. They wanted to add that, and that's okay. Also, they will have the project recorded in order to expose it to the schools, community, and citizen. For example, the website, and I've been interviewed for French CBC Radio for Café Climatique News, and will be recorded for a follow-up later on. Also, the mayor, Mike Richmond, went to meet the leadership club to answer all the questions to the youth. There was a wonderful discussion together. And also, I have the Peak magazine who's gonna meet the youth next Monday to record their what's the impression on the project, and what's the enthusiasm, because by the way, the children are very, very, very much enthusiastic to that project. For the chair of the SLRD, the resource teacher of Signal Hill will do that right after the winter holidays, because I'm using the same paint from the chair of the municipality of Pemberton. So once they're done with the paint, they can use the Signal Hill. Please, next slide. So to conclude, children and youth have a voice that needs to be listened to. We shape their future, not ours. Yes, we do have a future, but pretty for elderly. We shape the future for our children, for our grandchildren. We have a responsibility to take them into consideration. Please adopt the chair of next generation and listen to them. Any question?
Great. Who has questions? Go ahead.
It doesn't have to be a question. I just wanted to say, I think this is a great presentation. Thank you very much, Maud. I just asked, I've got a question. Do you have enough money for this project? Is that 175 enough?
Yeah, it is going to be enough. I have enough for having pizza for the youth after the project.
Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Birch Jones.
Thank you. I love this idea. Thank you. Thank you for your good energy. We have a green club at Lillooet Secondary School, and right now they're working on plastic pollution, but it might be a good contact for you. So just so you know, I've been connected with a teacher in the new site school. It's complicated because there's no parents board. So I wanted to start with them, and then they connect with the principal and stuff. So I'm very pleased that the youth will add on some reconciliation, some First Nation drawing. But definitely I tried to go in the new site. But if you have a contact with me, I can totally guide them into it, and we can do it there. It was a lot of energy for me to reach them. I'm sure. There, I
Yeah.
was thinking more about Lillooet Secondary School, and the contact
Oh,
would be Kim Halenko, and they have a green club that's working on plastics.
oh, Lillooet. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Actually, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay,
open to any. And by the way, the CBC News, after my interview, there was a person from Tofino, another person to contact me, and they're going to start this project as well in those regions. So that's pretty amazing.
Okay, we can make those connections offline after. Director Pettengill.
Just more connection, but love to hear a request in Squamish.
Okay. Great. All right, we will connect you with the municipalities that have not been connected thus far. Thank you so much. So would you like a resolution that we accept the chair? I think that's what we're asked to do here, right? Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Hoppel. Further comments? I think this is exciting. I look forward to seeing the classes, and I really look forward to having that chair sitting right there so that we can all see it when we make our decisions and think about our futures.
That line on the last slide, children and youth have a voice that needs to be listened to. We need to keep that in mind. We don't listen to kids.
That's right. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Happy holidays.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Right. We are now moving ahead in the agenda. Right. We're on 8.1. We are going to hear about Tiger Bay Development Corporation, OCP and zoning amendment application bylaws for third reading. Director Needham.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Vance will be speaking to the report. Thanks.
Good afternoon to the chair and the board. I'll be speaking to the report through a PowerPoint presentation, but as usual, I'll have Director Needham operate the PowerPoint since I've demonstrated in the past. I can't make it work on Zoom. So I'll just ask for the next slide, please. Thank you. So the purpose today of the report to the board is threefold: to provide additional information to the board based on a resolution at the September 27th meeting, to consider third reading of the two bylaws, which was deferred from the September 27th meeting, and to consider adjustments to the draft development agreement. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through these in detail on here because I'm going to go through each of them individually, but these were the 8 issues or topics that were raised by the board in September that staff was directed to go away and report back on. So next slide, please. So the first topic was the phasing of the recreational amenities on the site. So phase 1 is fairly modest. It's the surf park, the skate park, and the pump track. The pedestrian and cycling path, which will connect South Britannia to North Britannia along the side of the highway, and some paths and trails around the surf park itself. Next slide, please. Phase 2, more substantive. That's the first residential phase and the first subdivision. So that includes a number of dedications, Manatee Bay Park, and construction of a level crossing right-of-way for public access to Manatee Bay Park. Dedication of the parking lot for Manatee Bay, which will be on the north side of the tracks. Dedication of the Cliff Top Park, gravel interim waterfront walkway, not along the entire Manatee Bay waterfront, but where the lodge is proposed just north of the park itself. Dedication of the community center and playfield site. Dedication of the highway bypass. Whether it's ever built or not, who knows, but Tiger Bay is dedicating that land. Dedication of some of the green space and trails, and construction of the first local park. Next slide, please. Phase 3, we get more away from the dedication and into the construction. That includes the permanent CN crossing to Manatee Bay Park. So that'll be a above grade or elevated pedestrian crossing of the tracks. Construction of the playfield, construction of the community center, if directed by the board. It can be delayed to phase 3. We'll get into that later, but at this point it's phase 3. Construction of more of the paths and trails, construction of another small park, construction of the Manatee Bay parking lot and washrooms. The washrooms will be full service. They'll be attached to the parking lot itself, and provision of the first 38 childcare spaces. Next slide, please. Phase 4, the final local park, construction of the final paved waterfront walkway rather than the interim condition, because by then the lodge will be built, and provision of the additional 38 childcare spaces. Next slide, please. So the affordable housing, we appreciate this has been a lot of interest to the board. Position of staff continues to be that at this point to get into the details of exactly when and how the affordable housing is going to be constructed is premature. A lot of changes taking place in the whole affordable housing front in terms of funding sources, the terms and conditions attached to them, and so on. So really to get into any meaningful discussions with most of the housing providers, they want the zoning in place. And the first housing is not going to be until 3 years post zoning. So this gives lots of time for some thoughtful exploration and discussion of what's going to work at South Britannia at the time. And again, that'll require a housing agreement. That housing agreement will require board approval. So nothing is going to happen in the way of affordable housing down there without the board agreeing to it. Next slide, please. So in terms of the timing and number of residential units per phase, there's the 20 interim housing cabins, which we'll talk about a bit more, which will initially be used to house construction and other workers, and ultimately converted to tourism accommodation. The numbers for phase 2 and 3, the market units, those are approximate. That's what Tiger Bay at this point thinks will happen. It can adjust a little bit, but ultimately there'll be 900 market housing units and 150 non-market units at South Britannia. Next slide, please. So with respect to the construction workforce, this was of a lot of interest to the board. So I mean, first of all, we recognize that there's lots of room on the site to accommodate temporary housing for any purpose during certainly the early phases of the development. But what Tiger Bay has proposed as part of phase 1 is the 20 cabins that I mentioned earlier to house the workforce for the construction of the surf park. Ultimately, they can be used for employment housing. Ultimately, they'll probably convert over to tourist accommodation once there's other housing on the site for the various workers. Tiger Bay's view is that they're going to try and use local labor as much as possible. So they're using local labor. There's less demand, they believe, required for on-site housing. And shuttle bus service, if it's available, will also provide an option for employees who are choosing to commute, perhaps from Greater Vancouver area, perhaps from Squamish. Next slide, please. So the issue been raised, and it's been raised before by the board about institutional light industrial. So the OCP has never envisioned industrial in South Britannia. It encourages non-polluting industry in North Britannia and has some land apparently designated for those uses, whereas it's not designated in South Britannia. However, what we did in the zoning and the OCP in reaction to the where the board wanted to go is we've written into the zoning certain forms of light industry and cottage and craft manufacturing, which can be accommodated in the commercial areas. So if you can imagine, could be restaurants in there, there could be woodworkers in there, there could be various types of super light industry mixed in there, but certainly there's no plan for standalone industry of any sort. There's simply no room for it, and that commercial space can also accommodate civic and similar uses if there's a demand for it. Next slide, please. So there's been a lot of discussion by the board over the years about the amount of commercial. The OCP had envisioned for South Britannia only about 16,000 square feet of commercial, but That was then and this is now. Certainly there's a fair amount of commercial being considered and developed and already there in North Britannia. So we have to think about this area as a whole and not just South Britannia. However, the amount of commercial space has been significantly boosted. It's a range estimate. There's flexibility in there. By adding an additional commercial area and just increasing the amount of commercial overall, including the possibility of, for example, second floor office. I want to emphasize that this does not include the tourist accommodation. This is not the hotel. I think when we wrote the zone, however, I think for the main hotel, we sort of figured the main floor of the hotel, I mean, there'll be lobby and so on, but there also could be some commercial in there, but this does not include the tourist accommodation floor space. And we also wrote the zone as broadly as possible to allow as many types of retail, professional, personal services uses and so on as possible. So there's a lot of flexibility in there and accommodate whatever the market is looking for. And I think one of the board members at the last meeting had raised the possibility of a police station in South Britannia. If and when that ever happens, who knows? But certainly a police station could be accommodated in some of the commercial space, which is fairly typical with these satellite police stations, which are relatively modest in size. Next slide, please. So the childcare, what we've done here is it's been boosted. It's 76 spaces that are now proposed, which will enable a 30% access target. That's the highest in the SLRD's policy. So 38 of the spaces are proposed for phase 3 when there'll be some demand there for it. And then in phase 4, the additional 38 spaces are required. Next slide, please. So the board had also asked for the changes that have been made to the plan over the last number of years based on board input. So we look back from November of 2020 up till September 2023. I don't think this captures all of them. It captures certainly the key ones. Increase in the non-market rental units from 50 and 100 market rental units to 150 non-market rental units. That's in addition to the 900 market units, which are not rental. There's the increase I'd already mentioned in the amount of childcare space, increase in the amount of commercial space, and adding a commercial center that's not part of the Surf Village. Next slide, please. Commitment to boosting the step code requirements on the site, the prohibition of fossil fuels, adding the service washroom building and parking for Manatee Bay Park, which we mentioned, building the transit hub, which was an early request by the board, and upgrading the current highway underpass to 2 lanes with separated cycling and pedestrian infrastructure instead of the 1-lane tunnel that's currently there. Next slide. There's also commitment to a contribution up front of the $480,000 for the Britannia Beach Fire Department, and that would happen at the as one of the conditions of 4th reading, and a further 1.1 and a bit plus CPI on a phase basis in further contributions as development proceeds, providing the workforce housing in phase 1, which you'd already mentioned, and advancing the obligation to construct the community center from phase 4 to phase 3. But what we're suggesting that there be a prerequisite, the board at its sole discussion or discretion can decide before phase 3 whether it actually wants the community center in phase 3 or wants it in phase 4. And a couple of those considerations may be the cost of operating the community center and whether there'll be sufficient population in phase 3 to support that. And also whether the school district ultimately decides to build a school there, because if they do, the community center may become part of or joined to the school, so that may affect the timing as well. Next slide, please. So I think the most significant change, certainly from when the board saw this in September, you may recall there was an initial proposal by Tiger Bay for $2,000 per market apartment unit and $3,000 per market townhouse unit in CAC's table. which had totaled about 2.5 million. Tiger Bay has now come forward offering in the last few weeks a CAC flat out of 5,000 per market residential unit. So that's for the 900 market units, and that'll total about $4.5 million. And we've been having further discussions with Tiger Bay about the timing of payment. Tiger Bay had requested in September and had been continuing requests that the payment of the CACs be at the closing of the sale of each unit. That's for cash flow reasons. It's certainly doable. We can do there's no way we're going to lose track of it. We can put covenants and so on in place. We'll make sure that that money is paid at the closing of the sale of each unit. However, it is a bit unusual. Usually CACs are payable at either rezoning or at development permit or at building permits. So as of this morning in discussions with Tiger Bay, the position is they certainly prefer it be at the closing of the sale of each unit. However, the board wants more consistency and a more common approach. Tiger Bay is prepared to move it to payment to the building permit for each phase. I think that may wrap it up. Oh, no, I think there's one more slide. So the recommended resolutions are third reading, the two bylaws, which then need to be referred to MODI for approval, and that the development agreement be finalized with 3 key adjustments, the CACs added, the community center moved to phase 3, and 20 cabins in phase 1 for workforce housing. Now I think that ends it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions? Director Herford, I'll start a list.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. On the earlier at one point in the presentation, there's mention of some of the dollar amounts being tied to CPI, and I was wondering around on the CAC piece, given the proposed timing being later in the process, if there was any discussion around having a similar mechanism for that particular piece.
Thank you. Good question through the board. There had been, and we decided to use the same approach, which was taken for Furry Creek for equity and fairness, which is there's no CPI on the CACs payable at Furry Creek. So the same approach was applied to South Britannia.
Okay, thank you. I think the timing is interesting, and thank you for bringing forward sort of that what seems to be palatable for the developer alternate. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Dr. Demare.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Vance. It was very well laid out and easy to understand. I got one question on the 20 cabins. Will that be part of the surf park?
Through the chair, well, it'll be in the vicinity of the surf park. It'll ultimately be turned into tourist accommodation. My thought had initially been that they'd be there temporarily, but Tiger Bay feels that they can leave them there permanently. So they'll be adjacent to the surf park, but they won't necessarily be for anybody who's using the surf park specifically, just like the hotel won't either. It'll just be of the 190 tourist units, 20 of them will be these cabins.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a comment about in terms of industrial space and so on, there's just no space for other stuff. But in childcare, there's a 3.7 square meter indoor requirement per child, but also 6 square meters outdoors. And, you know, I know the drawings we've seen are conceptual and so on, but are we confident that there's actually the indoor and outdoor space to achieve the level of childcare spots that are proposed?
Through the chair, yes, we are. And having done a lot of work on this recently in a number of developments, they're getting more creative with it. The outdoor space can come in a number of forms. I mean, obviously the preference is for ground level outdoor space, but I've seen some projects recently where the childcare is on, for example, the second level, and the childcare space is out on the rooftop. So there's not expected to be any concern accommodating both the indoor and outdoor space associated with the childcare.
Okay, thank you. And then on the fossil fuel commitment, it says including and lists some specific things. I was sort of under the understanding previously that we're talking about a just full stop prohibition. So that would include decorative, cooking, sort of anything at all, fossil infrastructure. Can you just clarify what we're talking about here?
It certainly, through the chair, it includes cooking, commercial cooking, and so on. There's absolutely no plan to run a natural gas line down to South Britannia. So if anybody's got an outdoor barbecue, they're going to be using propane or whatever, but there's no intent to provide any natural gas service to South Britannia.
Okay, I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. Director Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just to follow up on Director Pettingill's question with regards to childcare, can you just confirm what square footage of childcare is being secured?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
It was in your presentation. I think I saw 198, which is less than the 3.7 meters squared required in the bylaw. Or sorry, the legislation.
I know what that was. Yeah, that well, the 185, that was the initial number that had been proposed. So it's been increased beyond that. That was just the initial number that was in there. So it's more than that. It meets whatever the standards are now. There's a space for it. So it's not a concern. Whatever the requirements are, they can be met.
And then can you just clarify how much? So the staff report says that there's between 51,000 and 77 square feet of commercial space that is now being provided. And appreciate that in your presentation, you said that that doesn't include tourist accommodation, but how much of that, if you remove the surf park and the childcare space, how much of that is actually left over commercial space?
I can't, through the chair, give a precise number, but it would certainly be the majority.
Okay.
Just to clarify on the surf park, I mean, there's the actual surf park itself, and there'll be some change rooms and administrative function associated with that. But while it's called surf park, general commercials allowed in there. So the zoning allows retail, allows office, it allows many things. So while it may be physically close to the surf park, there's nothing that would stop other types of enterprises beyond things that are tied to the surf park being in some of that space.
Okay, and then finally, can you just remind me why we've explicitly excluded campground and recreational vehicle park from the use definition of tourist accommodation in this zone?
Yes, through the chair. That goes back years. That was early discussions, and the decision was made. There never been in the OCP a campground envisioned for the South Britannia area, but again, that was then. This is now. But in discussions with Tiger Bay, and it goes back to before I was even involved in this most recent submission, their preference was for permanent tourist accommodation rather than a portion of it being this more transient temporary accommodation. Plus, the only area where, in theory, a campground might make sense here would be at the very southern part of the project, adjacent to Manatee Bay Park, but obviously on the other side of the tracks. The terrain in there is quite steep, and it's really not set up to allow RVs and things like that to easily maneuver in there. So the decision was made by Tiger Bay that they want to put permanent cabins in there, which would be easier to access and service rather than having a campground.
Thank you.
Director Crompton.
Is there any security that for the board that the cabins will be permanent structures, or not? Or is there any security for the board that these cabins be permanent structures?
Through the chair, is that with reference to the the 20 cabins that are part of the initial.
Yes, correct.
We can certainly make them permanent. As I'd indicated, I thought initially that Tiger Bay would have them there for some period of time and then demolish them, but their feeling now is no, we want to leave them there. So we can certainly make it a condition they remain there, although their usefulness in time sort of diminishes if there's other accommodation in there, for workers and for tourists and so on. So again, my understanding is they want to make them permanent. If they didn't, if they want to take them out, they can certainly replace them somewhere else on the site.
As the design guidelines would be permanent structures, though, this is not another way to say work camp. Is that fair?
Yeah, certainly through the chair, these things couldn't be sort of to some kind of a temporary standard. They'd have to be to building code standards. So right off the bat, to build something to building code standards has a significant cost associated with it. So the chances of them being at some point then demolished are probably less.
Sorry, through the chair, I think we can set any of those details out in the housing agreement.
Oh, through the chair, these units will require housing agreements?
The development agreement.
The development agreement, okay, yeah, sounds good. Does the proponent require support from the board to construct temporary housing on this site to support the project?
Through the chair, yeah, this a good point. Again, this had come up in the past. It will require, if there's going to be temporary housing on there, and Director Needham can confirm this 100%, but I think it would require a temporary use permit, and that was deliberate. And this was actually something that Tiger Bay themselves wanted as well. So the board has some control what goes on in there. There've been some early discussion by several members of the board. Well, why don't we just add temporary housing in there as an outright use in the zoning? But it's one of these, be careful what you wish for. That could have all sorts of unintended consequences. So Tiger Bay was very supportive of no, if there's a need for the temporary housing, they will seek a temporary use permit from the board.
Okay, that's comforting. Is the playing field going to be constructed by the developer, or is it simply a site dedication?
Through the chair, no, it's an obligation of the developer that they build the play field to a proper standard, to the SLRD's standards, and then once constructed, their obligation ends on the play field.
And does is it a full-size soccer field that a local soccer club could play games on?
Yes, it is.
Are there any significant portions of this site that offer additional redevelopment densification opportunities for the developer and the regional district in the future? I'm thinking of remainder lands.
Well, the majority of Tiger Bay's land holdings in South Britannia are not part of this OCP amendment and rezoning. They have significant additional lands down there. Terrain is a challenge, servicing is a challenge. Certainly we wouldn't envision within the area that's part of the subject bylaws that there'd be much room for densification in there.
But beyond, there's significant additional opportunities.
There are, and that certainly would require the board amending the OCP, the remaining land, or I can't remember exactly what the designation is, a rural resource or something like that. And again, there's terrain challenges, but that'd obviously be up to Tiger Bay as to whether at some point they may wish to pursue an opportunity for some of the remainder of their lands.
Okay. And then I have one final question now, and I hope that are there, you said to Director Stoner that the square foot per child can be met. Is it required to be met by zoning?
It'll be required to be met by the health authority, if nothing else, but the zoning can accommodate it.
It can, but it does, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Through the chair, to Director Crompton's comment, any future development in that area of the Tiger Bay lands would also require an RGS amendment.
Okay.
It's non-settlement land.
Okay, thank you very much. How much of it is there? Like how many acres? Hectares? Whatever
I don't
measure you
know
want
off
to
the
put on it.
top of my head, but they have some significant holdings down there on other large district lots.
Yeah, very, very significant. I would estimate certainly in the hundreds of acres, but again, a lot of it is undevelopable, plus a portion of it, they are, as I mentioned, putting this highway bypass dedication in there, which is many, many acres of land. And then you look at the lands beyond that, they are very steep in a lot of cases.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. I appreciate your description, Mr. Vance, of the ability to be a bit more prescriptive about when the CAC offer is delivered. I heard you mention building permit, but that is still pretty late in the game. So I'm just wondering if there's the opportunity for the board to direct that to be collected at development permit.
Through the chair, we discussed development permit with Tiger Bay. They do not want to do it at the development permit stage. It's a lot of money they're putting up front. If they do it at the building permit stage, which is, I've worked on a number of projects which are multi-phase where it's been done at the building permit phase, then they've got their construction financing in place, so they can more easily absorb it. So they're certainly prepared to go to BP, which is used in some cases, but they're not prepared to go to DP.
Question for Director Needham. What did we do at Fine Piece? When are we paying there?
On development permit stage.
Great. Go ahead, Director Crompton.
So if we didn't like that decision, and because it's an amenity contribution, not something that we can require, is the only option to decline to give it third reading?
I'm looking to Director Needham to answer that question.
I've just heard from the applicants that they are prepared to offer it at the DP stage, but you know, it does create cash flow challenges.
Understood. I'll make the resolutions if it's at DP.
Okay, so. Sorry, I had one further question before you.
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify back to the childcare amount. In the actual zoning bylaw 16.4.9, the village commercial South Britannia use standards still has a minimum gross floor area of 185 meters squared of childcare facility, which is not in line with the requirements for the CCLR legislative regulations. I'm just wondering if staff can clarify with, as it's written in the zoning bylaw, if we're undermining how much space is actually required and how much we're securing.
Through the chair, it's going to be a requirement in the development agreement as to the amount of childcare space or number of childcare spaces they have to provide. So what's in the zoning is the minimum, but they have to provide what the development agreement says. So the development agreement kind of overrides the zoning in that respect.
Can you clarify why those two things would not be the same?
Sorry, repeat the question, please.
Clarify why those two things would not say the same thing? Like, why would the development agreement say something different than the zoning?
Through the chair, I think part of it is when the zoning was written and when the decisions were made on the amount of childcare that would be required, there were different points in time. So the development agreement, again, if the requirement is for 78 spaces, they have to provide 78 spaces. What's in the zone is simply the minimum, but they have to meet what the development agreement says. So if it says 78 spaces, they have to provide it.
For clarity, it's 76, right?
70, pardon me, 76, yes.
For the sake of the record, don't want to.
I just added 2 more, yeah.
Are there other questions? Director Rainbow, then Director Pettengill?
I'm going to make a resolution.
Okay, do you have a question?
I thought there was a resolution. I was gonna ask for a clarifying
Yeah,
question. So,
Jack already made the resolution, but we want to clarify the resolution, so.
Sure, I don't need to make the resolution. I do have another question though.
Okay, let's only handle questions and then we're
I
gonna be
apologize.
super black and
I
white
didn't-
about when the resolutions are made.
Yeah.
Question, go ahead.
So we say in phase 1 that they will build, that the development agreement include a requirement that a minimum of 20 cabins be constructed at the outset of phase 1 of development that will initially be used as needed for workforce housing. Does this prevent them from building 50, say? So this is a minimum, but could they build 50 as part of phase 1 if they so chose? And I'll have comments during comments that might clarify why that would be a good idea. Are they restricted from building more than 20 by what we propose here?
Through the chair, it would depend on what we put in the development agreement. We set a minimum, but our thought was 20. Putting 50 in as an example, I don't have an answer to whether physically there's the space. There's servicing issues. It may trip up against zoning. I don't know. That would require a deep dive. It would also be a financing issue for Tiger Bay. So at this point, when we say a minimum, I think we've been sort of thinking 20, whether 50 is possible. I don't have an immediate answer for that.
So you misunderstood my question.
Yeah, through the chair, the developer has stated that in those 20 cabins, there would be 50 beds, which they think is actually more than enough for the required construction team.
But my question was though, is 20 also a maximum, or is it only a minimum?
They've agreed to build 20.
They've agreed to build 20, but if they came back to you in a year and said, we'd like to build 50 in phase 1, would anything prevent them from doing so?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm comforted. Thank you.
Question? Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify the 20 interim housing cabins. Are they staying? They're not permanent, are they?
Yeah, they are.
They are going to be permanent.
They may or may not be.
They may or
permanent.
may
It really
not be.
depends,
Okay.
you know, I don't think the developer wants to hamstring the development with building a certain form of housing just to house workers, if ultimately that it makes more sense to build multifamily and house more people on that particular portion of the site. So the idea is to build housing to accommodate the construction workforce. And then I think it really depends on, you know, the developer at the time as to how they want to proceed. They may want to keep them, it
Right,
depends.
and those 20 constructive places would be throughout the phases, all the phases, and then at that time they would decide whether they wanted to keep them, build something else. Because they house how many people each?
I think that, no, what we're talking about right now is really to do with the construction workforce, not, this is to be
Right.
built at the beginning
Right.
to sort of assist
But how
with
many
the surface
employees?
construction.
Housed?
They're saying 50 beds.
50 beds,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, there is a Minister of Transportation sort of approved access that has, that the developer has been dealing with. So I think anything beyond 50 would probably trigger an amendment to that MOTI transportation study. Right. So I think that's something to be, it's, I guess, something to think about. However, this bylaw is going to be getting referred to Modi if third reading is given today.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So I guess given this conversation, I'm trying to wrap my head around, I think there's reluctance or hesitance on the board about a work camp. And it sounds like these could be temporary, this could be a work camp. And so how do we avoid a situation where we are pre-approving a work camp? Because I'm not sure there's comfort with that.
The difference, for clarity, you're saying that we're saying cabins, the potential for them to be temporary ATCO trailers is the concern? Is that what you're raising?
A work camp of some sort, and I don't think we've had a discussion about what we are or aren't comfortable with a work camp. And as soon as I hear temporary or might not stay there, I'm thinking that's a work camp of some sort, and I'm not sure I'm there.
Okay, Director Rainbow.
I'd like to ask a question again.
Yep.
Okay, we have these 20 permanent buildings. And they are part of the total amount of buildings that, or the total amount of units that Tiger Bay can build. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of tourist accommodation that they've been allocated.
Part of that.
And these would be part of that. They would convert to tourist accommodation after they're used as construction.
No, sorry, what I'm trying to get at is this. So they put up these buildings and initially use them at the board's request from the last meeting to allow workers construction workers to live in them.
Yes.
Then at a certain point, they're going to make a business decision. Is it better to leave them in place as permanent buildings? Or does it make more sense to pull them down and to put up different units there? Either way, we end up with some permanent stuff we requested, and we end up with the same number of units when the project is complete. So just for us to, if at one meeting say that we want some accommodation for workers, and at the next meeting to say, well, this is a work camp and we don't like it, it's nonsense, excuse me.
Go ahead, Director Crompton.
I want to clarify what I think I understood, which is that these will be built to the same design guidelines as the final project. This is not built to some lower standard. It's same architectural, same, step code, all of what we will work through during development permit is going to be applied to these in the same way they're applied to others. Am I understanding things correctly?
Through the chair, yes, exactly. Now, if they, many years down the road, look at it and go, well, we put a lot of money in there, but we can make more money by bulldozing or relocating, maybe taking those cabins, moving down to the south end of the site, lifting them up and moving them, so be it. But yes, the idea of these 20 cabins is they are not some kind of a temporary work camp.
So I asked about the no gas covenant, and it was mentioned there's no intent for them to do cooking and so on. Will that be part of the covenant? This is a full stop, no fossil fuel, and that's part of the covenant. Is that what's coming as part of the resolution as proposed?
Through the chair, that is already written into the draft development agreement. So we'd already anticipated that. So that development agreement runs with the land. So it's a given. So it's part of that covenant. The development agreement is a covenant registered on the property. So it covers off many of the things we've talked about here today.
Director Rainbow, would you like to make a motion?
Are we ready for that? Yes, I would.
And I think we'll handle each that separately. There's the report, but on the agenda.
Page 6, where am I looking at?
I'm looking at the agenda because, and I can read them out for the sake of the record.
Yeah. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we need to do here? One at a time?
Yes, please.
I'll move the first that.
1759-2021.
One side of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Electoral Area D Official Community Plan Bylaw number 1135-2013, Amendment Bylaw number 1739-2021, be given third reading.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Director Mack. Comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, sort of a little bit torn here, but I think I'm not at supporting this. I do appreciate actually some of the conversation clarification we had today. I think it does improve things from my initial understanding. But when I sort of take a step back, I'm still at the place where if our plan was to build a sort of single industry commuter town, this makes a lot of sense. But in terms of the complete community that the RGS talks about, and I understand the RGS has changed over time and board direction has changed over time, but against the current RGS and complete community, even when I consider this in the broader context of Britannia, I don't see sufficient employment opportunities planned that match the affordability of the housing there. And I know there's thought that people might work from home, but there's nothing that's been presented that I've seen that suggests why this would support a higher rate of work from home or direct that. And so for me, this is not meeting the bar of what I think is a complete community. I think we could get there. But I am seeing again a single industry commuter town, which I think is what we've pretty explicitly said we don't want to do. And so for me, there needs to be more work to get there.
Thank you, Director Rainbow. Okay. Other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I also won't be supporting the motion on the floor. I do want to recognize and appreciate that I think the board and the proponent and staff have worked really hard to get to where we are today, and we have come a long way. In particular, I want to recognize that we've made significant strides on the affordable housing component, on the childcare component, on ensuring that there's sufficient recreational space for the future community that's going to live here. But I agree that it's not the commercial space that is being provided is not setting a community up for success in terms of a long-term complete community. The lack of any form of light industrial space is a significant concern to me. We know that's one of the highest demands throughout the corridor. And there just isn't any here. What we're looking at are relatively low wage workforce for tourism and accommodation. And while we've made progress on the affordable housing front through this rezoning process, there, to me, isn't sufficient to affordable housing to support the workforce that's going to be needed to come in to support the industries that are being presented. So I'm regrettably not going to support third reading at this time.
Okay, any other comments? I will call the question. All in favor? Are you in favor? Yep. Are there any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. And Director Rainbow.
The second part is of the bylaw number 1740-2021, cited the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Electoral Area D zoning bylaw number 1350-2016, amendment bylaw number 1740-2021, be given third reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Mack. Comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And
On the pursuant to section 52(3)(a) of the Transportation Act, bylaw number 1740-2021, cited the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Electoral Area D zoning bylaw number 1350-2016, amendment bylaw number 1740-2021, be sent to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for their approval prior to adoption of the bylaw.
thank you very much. Seconded by Director Mack. Comments? I have a question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? No opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
And then that sorry.
I was going to propose a motion that's different than the one in the agenda for the next one.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I would make the motion that a community amenity contribution amount of 5,000 per market residential unit payable to the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District at time of development permit will be approved and included in the development agreement.
Okay. I have a seconder.
I'd like to propose that and it be transferred to the District of Squamish.
Okay.
So we, for the fine piece, it was also, actually, allocated towards the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. Let me pull this up, hold on.
Legally, we can't do it? No. Okay. All right, then I'm happy to.
Present and we can talk about that.
It will come back later as a decision of the board where and how it will be allocated based on further discussion with the District of Squamish or other communities as it pertains to CACs, but it comes back as a board decision on how it gets allocated. But
So
it is
why
being
are we
held.
not allowed to do that?
Let Nikki answer.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have an answer per se about how we're not supposed to. This is, so in the development agreement for fine piece, was that the CACs must be paid prior to the issuance of the development permit, for which the application has been made, to be used by the regional district when providing grants and financial contributions to the District of Squamish in support of such services. That is what was included in the development permit for fine piece.
Can we use that language?
That was specifically in the development agreement, so we could include similar language into that when it comes back.
Okay, perfect.
Director Matt? Oh, sorry, Director Rainbow and then Director Matt. Go ahead.
We have a policy that at the moment states that CACs in an electoral area should be spent in that electoral area. So what your motion would do if we were to pass it, it just ignores that policy. I think that's a central part of that policy, that's where the money should be spent. So if we want to change that, I think that's a discussion that should happen quite separate from any discussion about Tiger Bay. Director Stoner pointed out last time that just because it says it in the policy, we can have a board resolution that will change that. We can do whatever we like as a board, and that's true. But if we have a policy in place and a really central part of that policy directs the money to be spent in a certain area, if we're going to change that, it should be more than a 5-minute discussion here. We need some thought put into that and an extended discussion in a separate area. So I think I'd be voting against that. I think we should stick with what's in the agenda.
Director Matt?
Yeah, I totally agree with Director Rainbow. I mean, we're getting way ahead of ourselves with these CACs. There is a policy in place right now of CACs that are developed in an electoral area are to be spent in that electoral area. If you want to change that policy, that's a whole other discussion. You can't just all of a sudden here say, oh, by the way, now we'll send all that money to Squamish or to Whistler or wherever. That isn't what our policy states. It states if the money is generated in the electoral area, it stays in the electoral area. And we need to abide by that policy until it's changed. So here we go.
Thank you. And I have Director Herford.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, my video has been on and off, so I hope I'm not too glitchy. I'm supportive of Councillor Stoner's wording, and I'd like to second it if it wasn't seconded in the room. I couldn't see from the owl. And so I'll just start with that, and then I'll make my comments specifically to that motion, if that's okay.
Director Stoner?
I was going to suggest that I withdraw my motion and use the language that came from the fine piece. Oh, that was in the development.
That was in the development.
Okay, so my motion stands.
So the motion stands and it's seconded by Director Herford.
Thank you.
And I will open the floor for comments on the motion as presented by Director Stoner. So this
Could you
only
read that
need
back to us, please?
Yes, so the community amenity contribution in the amount of $5,000 per market residential unit payable to the SLRD at the time of development permit instead of closing of sale of each market residential unit in South Britannia be approved and included in the development agreement. So that has been moved and seconded, and I'll go to Director Rainbow and then Director Peck.
Yeah, just a question. So let's say we pass this.
Yeah.
And let's say that Tiger Bay say, no, we're not going to do that.
They've already said
They already said they would.
They said it.
I'm just suggesting that maybe afterwards, but if they said, no, we're not going to do it, what can we do about that? CAC is a voluntary.
No.
We can't-
That's subjective. It's rezoning.
Rezoned. It's been agreed to by the.
I will support this. I think, comment I want to make though is, one of the reasons why I wasn't ready to move forward in the other resolutions is for me, because we aren't at a complete community yet, then CACs become much more important to fill those gaps. And I know that as a board, and it also has a greater impact on neighboring communities. And so the necessity of some of those CACs going to offset those impacts becomes a lot more critical. As a board, we know there's it's a bit of a contentious issue. And so I wasn't really looking forward to a lot of debates about this topic, but it looks like that's where we are, and we're going to have that discussion. I think it's important that these are at development permit time so that we can actually build some of the infrastructure required to deal with some of these offsets. When I was at the public hearing, I heard a number of folks in Britannia be very explicit that thus far the development in Britannia has not provided the amenities that they need to see from that development. And, you know, there's some CACs here which might fill that gap, but there's not clarity to me that it's sufficient or it'll fit the needs. So unfortunately, I think we've got some work ahead. I think, you know, we are going to have to see this really help the neighboring community because we haven't done the complete community, there are going to be those impacts which we're going to have to deal with now. I don't think this is the ideal way to deal with it, but it's where we are and it's the best we have. So I will support this for that reason.
Thanks. Director Herford?
Yeah, thank you. I'm supportive of this direction. I think I appreciate the sort of how far we've come in this process generally, and to arrive here at a point where there's a dollar figure that makes sense appears to make sense to the group and the flexibility of the proponent on the delivery of the CAC payments. I'm happy to see there is future discussions absolutely around internally to SLRD policy around when and how and to what ends these funds get distributed, or CAC funds in general get distributed, and I certainly wouldn't want to encumber this process with that discussion. So, when I was at the public hearing for this project, I heard a lot of residents of Britannia looking for more amenities, and frankly, the amenities proposed in the on-site weren't going to meet those needs. So I think it's important that we have this mechanism to ensure that those amenities get realized wherever they end up physically being located or anything. All these funds should be used to provide amenities for the people of the area and of the electoral area, regardless of where those services or amenities are physically located. So I think that's the concept we'll have to wrestle with, but I appreciate the flexibility and the ability to get us to here, and I'm happy to support and look forward to those future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director DeMare.
Nikki, could you read again what was in the fine piece?
In the development
That's in the
agreement.
development.
We can't.
We're not talking about
We're not
that.
debating that now.
Yeah,
Come back to us.
But I want to hear it again, because it'll make sense to me to the way I vote.
Okay, and again, this is for fine piece, was that Regarding CACs, they must be paid prior to the issuance of development permit for which the application has been made, and they're to be used by the regional district when providing grants and financial contributions to the district of Squamish in support of such services.
So we'll have a say in the development permit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Think we have. Okay.
So at some point in time, we're gonna have a thorough discussion about how these CACs that are developed in electoral areas are taken over by the municipalities. No, seriously.
No,
So that's what we're talking about here.
No,
Well-
we are gonna discuss this in a committee of the whole at a future meeting.
But that's just what I
Around
said.
policy.
That's what I said.
Policy is
That's
not
right.
what's being debated today.
Okay, that's fine, but I want to be assured that we are gonna have a full discussion on this, that we're not just gonna make knee-jerk reactions and start sending money. Because we don't know how much, say, Squamish is even being affected by this. We don't know. So we need to know.
We will have that information before we make that decision. Okay.
Did I move it? What the heck, no, somebody.
Jenna moved it.
Director Herford.
Director Herford seconded it. And Director Birch Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to double check that what we're voting on now is just changing of the payable at the time of the developmental permit, which
To development permit.
which the developer has agreed to in this meeting, and that's it. That's the change to the I'm not hearing all of it, so, okay, good, thank you.
Okay. We're good? Calling the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We've got two more. The developer's obligation to construct the community center be moved to phase 3 from phase 4 in the development agreement, with the provision that the board, if it wishes at the time, at its sole discretion, can delay the community center until phase 4. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Hotzel. Comments? I see none. I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. And that the development agreement include a requirement that a minimum of 20 cabins be constructed at the outset of phase 1 of development that will initially be used as needed for workforce housing. Thank you. Seconded. Are you seconding it? Okay.
And just wanted to share 100%, we don't have to mention anything about temporary versus permanent at this point. We can deal with all that later.
Okay. Seconded by Director Hotzel. Comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the whole package here. Just wait to the last resolution. I mean, I've struggled all the way along that we were building a community. We asked way back years ago for some employment opportunities. The surf park idea was created. We asked for more commercial has been provided. So I think we've done some good work in it. I mean, I wasn't at this table when it was designated as a master plan community, and I still struggle with some of that designation, but that's what we inherited. And I think that through this process, I know there has been moments when people were frustrated that we were stalling, taking too long. What's before us today is substantially improved over what we first got years ago and months ago. And so just, we have this conversation. I want to take this moment to say, I think we've done a good job. Have we done a complete job? We'll find out. But I think we've done a good job taking it from where it was, as painful as the process may have seemed at times and slow, but it proves to me that the process works. Thank you to staff for working with the proponents. Again, I've had struggles with what this looks like from the beginning, but that is, that was designated way before my time. So I could sleep at night that we've done a thorough job sort of flushing out, and there's more to be done through the housing agreement and such that we can ensure. But yeah, I just wanted to make those comments, and that's why I'm supporting these resolutions at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I will, if a temporary use permit comes back to us for consideration, work my very hardest to convince everybody on this board to vote against it. And so I hope that the developer thinks very deeply about maybe building more of this cabin type housing up front so that they have the adequate housing they need for their workforce. I do not want to see a temporary use permit in front of us to help facilitate this. I want it to be facilitated by the housing that's going to be there. And I'm grateful that they moved this forward to where they did. I could not agree more with Director Richmond. We took time with this, and I think the result isn't perfect, as you see by people voting against it. But I think it's a project that the developer will be more proud of. I know I'll be more proud of. I know it'll serve the region better than what we originally considered. So I just I want to agree that the time we took with it and the flexibility of our staff and the developer were I'm grateful for them. Director Needham, I think you've done long, hard work on this, and it's nice to see some of these things come to fruition. And I also want to just finish by saying, I think the long-term impact of these two communities is going to be enormous. This is a huge number of people that are going to be added to the Sea to Sky Highway, and I hope that the work we've done here helps make that better, but I think we got to keep our eye on the ball, all of us together as we do the work. So, yeah, grateful to see it move along and look forward to seeing the conversation development permit.
No, I don't know anything else to say. I did move it. I don't think anybody seconded it.
Yeah, just.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're good. I am calling the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Vance, for joining us today. Thank you, Director Needham, for being here today. I'm calling a recess for 5 minutes because it's time. Right. Thank you.
Well, is that zero?
At 3:30. Hospital District. And guess what? We haven't touched
I don't know, I think Nikki's checked out. She's on a beach somewhere. I'll send her a text. She wants to join the meeting again. too.
Guys, we're at like number 5. So we're all gonna be here late tomorrow. Jack and I are walking out the door at 3:45 today, whether we're done or not, so.
Yeah, 15 minutes for the hospital.
We have an hour. Yeah, we have 15 minutes for the hospital agenda. Yes, thank you. We are calling this meeting back to order. And move the consent agenda.
I want to pull.
That's fine. You can second it and then pull.
Oh, okay. I'll second that.
And then pull 1 second.
Yeah. Sorry. 5.22.
Enough coffee.
No, never enough.
Never enough, never enough, never
So
enough.
you'd like to pull that to have discussion later in the agenda? Okay. And Chris?
Go on. Just the meeting minutes from November 22nd.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
The meeting minutes from November 22nd. 5.1.1.
Hold on.
Yeah, I just have a minor correction.
Okay. 11.3. Okay. With those 2 items pulled, are there any other items to be pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I call the question on the consent agenda as amended. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Any business arising? Well, I guess we'll deal with that in a little bit. All right. 7.1.1. That's where we're at, right? Request for decision regarding the recreation service report. Yeah.
We need.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the questions. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Heated funding report, including new funding applications. We want to deal with these each independently. Just maybe them all together. Yeah.
Just looking through the policy, like a lot of these seem on the line from the perspective of, it seems like we're funding long-term operations. Not that I oppose funding these groups, but I'm wondering if we need or already have on our work plan to have a look at the policy, because it seems like if some of these we're approving are a little bit contrary to the policy. Do we need to approve the policy and flag that as future work?
Who owns the policy on PDEP? It'd be a joint policy. Oh, the SLRD does.
And it's the committee of the board, so it would be the board's policy, I guess, sort of through PIVAS. However, this is a new policy. I think it was just brought forward 2 years ago because it came over from the Village of Pemberton on their community enhancement fund. And then what would happen is for any project or community group, Director Mack would contribute 50% of the cost of that project through select funds typically. So what was happening is the policy was transitioned to fall under PIVAS and be managed by SLRD. And so there is opportunity specifically under the Economic Development Fund to fund positions for sort of executive director assistant positions, staffing positions that typically will be found in other policies. So I wasn't aware, I didn't feel there was a conflict with the policy, but we can have another look at it.
Yeah, maybe it just sort of seemed that the push seemed to be to help the organization get off their feet and become self-funding and so on, but it seems that this is more of a plan for long-term funding, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but just didn't seem to align. So just a flag that I wonder if we do need to update the policy, but I support the.
Any other comments?
Yeah, just a comment on that. there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that need executive directors or paid staff. And they go out and they actually go and secure funding much more than what their wages are to help move their programs forward. So yeah, I told you, I'll be supporting this.
Director Mack?
Yeah, I think that the way this has been working, it's just been working fine. So I think we should just leave well enough alone. You know, it's a thing of this community with the regional district area C and the village. And all these groups make great presentations and they do wonderful work in our community. So I think we need to support it. And I think we've got an excellent program in place to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, do I have another second? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Further comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.1.3, this is a request for funding from the Village of Pemberton, additional funding for Pemberton Farm Road East trail lighting. This is a very good project. Moved. Director Mack?
I'll move that.
Seconded by Director Rainbow. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Recommendations from the EAD regarding the Growing Communities Fund project fund information from Director Demare.
Yeah, and that the 4 SLRD member municipalities be requested to share information on municipal growing fund projects at a future SLRD board meeting. We changed the wording on the in my director report to requested. So
Go ahead, Director Stone.
Just for clarification, all that information is public through the District of Squamish in our budgeting process and online. I'm just curious what format you anticipate for it to come back from, and is it just a verbal report from municipal directors, or do you want our staff to email?
it'd be good to have you know, at one of our board meetings, because we do have a lot of people that watch our board meetings, but it'd be good to have a document, just the outline of them. They don't have to go into a lot of detail. And one of the reasons is that, you know, what funds are there that will improve the lives of the electoral area directors, or what will benefit them from that. Very similar to the discussion we just having on Fine Peace and Tiger Bay. You know, what is it that you guys are working on that could work? The other piece of it is that once you read through that municipal, what can be used, it could be used for regional initiatives.
So I'll make a suggestion. When we do our board roundtable in committee of the whole each month, I have chosen to go with a theme, and perhaps at a future meeting, that will be the theme. Municipalities can share what they're doing with their Growing Communities Fund. Fair?
That'll work.
That's
And
fine.
if you've got stuff that you've already published, then make it available to us as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, one of the reasons is like, who from electoral area looks at the minutes from, or the Squamish Regional District, or the, sorry, Squamish District, or Lillooet District, or Whistler, or Pemberton?
Okay.
Not very many. So it'd be good to get it out what these things are useful.
All right. So I think that this will be a receive the report motion. I have Director Demare move it, seconded by Director Mack. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And recommendation from the Policy Development and Review Committee meeting from December 4th. Have someone move?
And what did we just do earlier on? Didn't we?
That was enclosed,
So it was.
so we will not discuss that. And so the motion is that we direct staff. I would like to make this a little bit vague in that we direct staff to pursue this review as directed by the policy committee within the guidelines of the budget process. Is that fair? Does that satisfy the need without being too prescriptive?
Yes.
Can I have someone move that?
Yes,
Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Rainbow. Further comments? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, 7.3.2 is the governance excellence next steps discussion. And right.
Does this just need to be received?
I think, well, this is just a recommendation from that committee that staff develop a prioritized list of governance initiatives, that staff schedule a policy development meeting for the end of January, early February. And that Tracy Lawrenson of Civic Excellence be invited to attend the January 10th EAD committee meeting to discuss area director role
I
clarity.
move all three.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded, Director Rainbow. Director Pettengill, did you have a question or a comment? No? Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from anyone? I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? That's great, thank you. I'm moving fast. 8.2. Area COTP and zoning amendment district lot 2160 Blackwater Road. Director Mack.
I would like to move all three. That's.
I'll second it.
Just for questions, okay. Ms. Katerniak is here to answer questions. Are there any questions before we make the motion? See any? Okay, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Are there any comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I still can't wrap my head around, this seems to be contrary to what's in the RGS. It's maybe a small increase in parcels, but it doesn't seem to me to align with what's in the RGS, so.
We've asked and answered that question at the last meeting, but thanks for raising it again for the record, and if anyone wishes to add anything to that. But otherwise, I think what we're saying here is we're providing an opportunity to create more housing on an existing lot. Doesn't change the RGS really.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I previously didn't support this, but there is a clarification that came in the staff report that the subdivision doesn't actually increase the regional housing stock. There's still only going to be 2 dwellings across the 2 parcels, and so I will support third reading.
Any comments? Question? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. You opposed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Director Pettengill is opposed. Thank you. All right. 8.3. North Arm Farm Brewery, F&B Lounge, EFA expansion, zoning amendment, third reading and MODI approval. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you. So my name is Claire Drew. I'm a senior planner here at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will speak briefly and high level to the staff report that is in the agenda, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. So the amendment bylaw received first and second reading at the October 25th board, and a 30-day referral period was initiated. Generally, the referral comments are supportive of the application. And they do not identify any issues with the zoning amendment. There are some additional items that were noted through the referrals that will be addressed at further permitting processes to come. And so the amendment bylaw is being presented for consideration of third reading. I can speak really high level to some of the referral comments because I do think they are interesting and noteworthy. The Agriculture Land Commission referral response noted that the ALC has no objection to the proposed site-specific text amendment to increase essentially the GFA. They did note that the proponent should be advised that construction and operation of the brewery in the ALR is only permitted in conjunction with production of the primary farm product. Now, the proponent has been in discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture and sorry, not Ministry of Agriculture, Agriculture Land Commission staff with respect to section 13.2 and how they are going to be confirming compliance with that section of the ALR use regulation. In terms of the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, they also, the referral response noted the setbacks, mainly that these uses are being located within the home plate, which is in the line with their ministry guide for edge planning. They did note that, parking may become a bit of an issue during peak season, and that ties into the Ministry of Transportation referral response, in which they did grant preliminary approval. We do need to refer prior to third reading. But one of the comments they noted was with respect to edge pavement and to sort of clean up the apron when you're turning off the highway into North Arm Farm. So that will be a condition that the proponent will be working with MOT on to address. And then Vancouver Coastal Health, they have noted no objection to the zoning amendment. They did note the permitting conditions around health and safety that will be tied in with the building permit process. Village of Pemberton highlighted connections to the Pemberton Valley Agriculture Plan and their council strategic plan with respect to create growth management strategies and creating a community where residents thrive and businesses prosper, including support for initiatives that increase food security. And that staff at the village believe the proposed expansion meets the intent of these strategies. Also highlighting the need for value added and that it maintains the official community plan policies that support agriculture. Farmland. And then I also wanted to note that the Lillooet Nation, they just with their referral committee meeting dates and workloads, they will be providing responses in January, and they are happy with our process to tie that back in with the Ministry of Transportation approval process prior to bylaw adoption. Yeah, and I guess one other thing to communicate verbally that the proponent has advised that an additional 500 signatures of support have been obtained. And then just reiterating the next steps in the process, we have a step 2 MOTI for approval. And then we also will have development permit and building permit steps where certain aspects around building code, geotechnical, outstanding permits, any of the VCH permits and whatnot, as well as this compliance with the ALR use regulation for primary farm product. That's sort of where we can look at those aspects in further detail. And I'll leave it at that, but happy to take any questions.
So in talking with the proponent with that, producing the product on your farm, so it's 50% of barley and hops in his case. And what he's saying is he has enough property, they can do 100% of both products. So he can comply with that issue. So having said that, I would like to move these to that.
Okay. Second that. Are there any other questions or comments that haven't been addressed? All right, I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I saw a hand, Armin. It was a little delayed, but we're good. No opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're on 8.4. Request for decision for the Tyotin Creek Estates OCP amendment, third reading and adoption. We have staff here for questions. Yep. Any questions? Let's see any questions. Would you like to move that third reading? Two separate things. Moved by Director Demers, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And that the, all right. That this bylaw cited be adopted. Moved by Director Demers, seconded by Director Stoner. Comments? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a comment, please.
Oh, too slow. Go ahead.
I have to thank staff. They did a wonderful job with this. And it was pretty complicated at the start for a lot of people. It was the OCP amendment. Yeah. That, that we've amended here. And if you look at some of the questions, they really went into the actual properties that were in that plan. And you did a marvelous job. Especially at the public hearing, answering all the questions. And you did it really respectfully, which was really top notch. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on. 8.5. This is a zoning amendment bylaw 1752-2022 regarding Area B agricultural zoning updates. Miss McKay is back. She's on the screen. Her name is on the screen. We can't see her face. We don't believe it until she's there.
Oh, she went unmuted.
Scared her away.
She's back. Scared her off.
Oh.
Hi, Miss.
Hi.
Right.
I know, I apologize. I'm having some camera issues, but I am here.
All right. That's okay. We believe you. You sound the same. Okay. Would you like to speak tops of the waves of this zoning amendment bylaw?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So thank you through the chair. I'll just speak really briefly to this report. Also going to close my other mute. There we go. Okay, sorry if that audio was playing twice. Okay, so this bylaw is the Area B agricultural changes for the zoning bylaw. So this amendment bylaw was last before the board at the end of last month, where it was given third reading and staff were directed to refer the bylaw to MOTI for final approval prior to adoption. Unfortunately, while we were in the process of preparing that referral, it was discovered that the mapping that forms part of the bylaw itself contained an error. So essentially, the mapping that was appended to the bylaw, and it, as I stated, forms part of the bylaw, it only showed those parcels that had less than 50% of their land base in the agricultural land reserve. And so those were the ones that were proposed to be split zoned. So the portion in the ALR would be zoned agricultural and the other portion would remain with its present zoning. There is a second set of parcels that the bylaw was intended to apply to, and that is those that have 50% or more of their land base in the agricultural land reserve, which would be are proposed to be fully rezoned to agriculture. So those parcels were not shown in the mapping. And what that means is that because that is part of the bylaw itself, updating that mapping constitutes a change in use and density, which requires us to go back and hold an additional public hearing. So staff are requesting that both second and third reading of the bylaw be rescinded, that the bylaw as amended be given second reading again, and then that staff are directed to move forward with scheduling and holding that second public hearing, which would be electronic. So I'll leave it there. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Very clear report. Thank you very much. So we can handle these in blocks. So that second and third reading of 1752-2022 be rescinded. Oh, go ahead, Director Birch Jones.
Oh, I was going to move that. So proceed. You're in the room.
So you're going to move it and it's seconded by Director Demers. Comments? I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And then the next, that will be handled by itself, that the 1752 be amended and be read a second time as amended, moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And that the board directs staff to schedule and advertise a public hearing to be held electronically and delegate the holding of the public hearing to Director Birch Jones, with me as alternate. And it doesn't say when, so whenever is practical. Moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Pettengill. Comments?
I appreciate staff's attention to detail on this, and that I know the AAC is pretty fine with it, and on the surface, it looks minor, it looks favorable, but I'm really happy that the property owners that are affected will have the opportunity to have a look, have a comment at the public hearing if necessary. So democracy proceeds. Thank you.
And I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. McKay.
Thank you.
All right. 8.6. All right.
Thank you.
We just went to Mexico.
What? Was perfect. Mexico was perfect.
Fantastic. We're on 8.6.
Yes. So the Pemberton Transfer Station Fees and Charges Regulation Bylaw number 1779-2022, amended bylaw number 1837-2023, be introduced and read at first, second, and third, and be adopted. So basically, the purpose of this bylaw is to remove the tipping fees for large appliances and for the SLRD to enter into an agreement with what we call the MAR program, which is the Extended Producer Responsibility Program for large appliances. So that is basically just removing tipping fees for residents, which will improve recycling those large appliances.
So there's no fee now.
Exactly. As of March 1st, 2024, we still allow staff to enter into a stronger agreement with MAR.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So with our metal bin sent out at Divine, because we're taking lots of big appliances there, how did we do that now for free?
Yes.
So will we get into that program there too, or?
So I will be suggesting to enter into the MAR program for Divine Transfer Station when we have the formal tenure and we are able to do.
Where are we at with?
We're still in the queue. It's moving along and.
They haven't checked us out yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I reached out not too long ago and so yeah, I haven't heard back.
So.
Would like to move.
Yes, I would like to move to two that's.
Nope, we can only do them
one at a time?
separately. So first, second, and third
First one.
moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then to move the adoption of said bylaw, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. Comments? All in favor?
Now you can get rid of all those fridges in your front yard.
Yeah, right. Oh, you keep dropping them off. Hey, in the middle of the night. Come on.
Okay, we have places to be.
Yeah.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And Gold Bridge, transfer station fees and charges regulated.
Yes. So again, same thing, Gold Bridge Transfer Station Fees and Charges Regulation Bylaw number 1761-2022, amended bylaw number 1836-2023 to be read first, second, and third time and be adopted. Same thing, effective March 1st, 2024, to enter into an agreement with MAR and be able to remove tipping fees for large appliances.
Great work, and I'll move the first one.
Okay, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Stoner. Call the question. Oh, do you want to make a comment? It has to be brief. I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then to move the adoption, please. Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Stoner. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Super. Let's talk about Lillooet landfill fees and charges regulation bylaw. please.
Not supporting this one.
Okay.
So staff suggests a repeal of bylaw for Lillooet landfill and recycling center. So 1835-2023 to amend the tipping fees and to amend the language to be a little bit stronger with the reality that we're facing right now. I didn't go into much detail, but again, we will be entering with the MAR program for Lillooet landfill. So large appliances, the tipping fees will be removed. I don't know if you want me to go in much detail for each of the tipping fees.
I don't think it's necessary. It was in our report. Thank you.
You have like all the information in front of you.
We do. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Who would like to move it? Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Hopple. Comment? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries, and that said bylaw be adopted. Moved by Director Hopple, seconded by Director Birch Jones. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 8.9, Lillooet Landfill Service Establishment Bylaw. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Do we have Suzanne? Oh,
Yeah, I'm just bringing Suzanne in,
Okay.
just in case there's any financial questions, but I can definitely speak to the report.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so good afternoon, Angela Belsham, Director of Legislative and Corporate Services. This report has been developed to update the board on the status of electric consent of the Lillooet and Area Refuse Disposal Local Service Establishment Bylaw Amendment, which increases the maximum requisition amount from 100,000 to 488,074. So the bylaw requires consent of at least 2/3, of which the board reviewed at the November 22 meeting. The service areas impacted are District of Lillooet, Areas A and Areas B. On November 22nd, directors of Electoral Area A and Electoral Area B provided consent. On December 5th, District of Lillooet Council opposed providing consent on behalf of their electorate. 2 council members in approval, 2 opposed. As a result, the bylaw requires an amendment of the recitals to reflect 2/3 consent has been achieved. So the corrected amendment bylaw is attached to the report in front of you, which has the recitals updated. Originally, the recitals said that consent was received from all the areas. Now we've just amended it so that it's saying 2/3 consent has been achieved. So staff are requesting the board rescind 3rd reading of the bylaw and that the corrected version of the bylaw be given 3rd reading as amended. The process to date and next steps required to achieve the new maximum requisition within 2024 are outlined within the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Thank you.
Right, so to talk about it, well, I did my best to have this resolution passed. It did not pass for a variety of reasons, and can I talk about those, why it was not passed?
Yeah.
I mean, so I voted in favor for Councillor Flan, who is also my SLRD alternate, voted in favor of it. It was an open meeting. But, you know, it was a 2-2 split, resulting in a failed adoption. So first of all, the increase was too high. I have voiced this with this board before about this increase being going from $30 to $150. To put it in perspective, when projects happen in larger centers, you know, and amenities for the community are there. In smaller places, it's tax based. We live on our tax base and our grants. So to have these, our taxes are, you know, fairly equal to larger centers, but our amenities are not. And this was just too high of an increase. Some did not feel like there was enough community engagement. It wasn't generated because of the forest fires. While the survey was done, some felt it was too long. It was only received by 100 people. It asked what services the residents wanted, but offered no insight to costs of those services. So some said, sure, we want more landfill hours, but they may have not said that if they realized that it was going to be a higher cost to that. They may have said, oh, okay, well, you know, we'll do with what we have. So that was a huge problem. A few issues around cost of scrap metal. So residents paid to put in the landfill, put the scrap metal in the landfill, and then those fees go to the SLRD for operations. However, the contractor is allowed to then hire a truck to come in, pick up the scrap metal and keep that revenue. So it's generated to their own pocket. And that did not sit well. Felt like if we were raising rates, if the SLRD was raising rates, then all of the revenue generated from those, whatever was put in the landfill, should be going back to the SLRD. It should not be going back to the contractor for a side income. So residents felt there should be a town meeting with SLRD to answer a variety of operational questions and a delegation to council thereafter. And I think if we look at, you know, even our agenda, specifically 9.4, the engagement policy, I think we fell short of that. So while I voted in favor of it, I do think that the SLRD fell short of engaging Lillooet and the residents and giving them a sound information of what was going to happen. Instead of putting out a survey saying, what services do you want? Because everybody picked everything. And then raising those rates, I think that we really should, I don't think that 2/3 is right when I think we should have done better. I think SLRD, we should have done better as a whole. So that's what I'm saying. I can't support this. I will support the council, even though I did support going the whole distance. But after listening to everybody thereafter and their comments and metal, I just think that we should do better. So.
You got a check?
Okay, no, sure.
You're up.
Sure.
Vivian. She's there.
Dr. Burris-Jones, will you handle chairing this for a moment while the chair is?
Certainly.
I can make a speakers list here.
I was going to back Lori up. I think she did a heroic job. And while I felt that the public engagement was pretty good, I'm so on side with this. I think I'm quite biased. And so I don't necessarily hear a lot of the negative comments, but yeah, they certainly piped up the council and everybody's been talking nothing but landfill ever since. And there's been a couple of contractors I've tried to send Omar's way, I'm happy to say. But yeah, I'll take over the chair and who is next on the speakers list? I see Jen coming back. Oh, okay. Covered it for you, Jen. Talk nonstop.
Thank you, Mike.
I hear your concerns, and you know, get people's concerns. That's a big jump for sure. So I totally recognize that. I'm wondering though, with the time and the contracts and where everything stands at this time, I don't want to say the luxury, do we have the ability to pause this, do more fulsome community engagement, have those sorts of conversations and still save this contract and make sure that that the landfill stays open, is my question to staff. If this takes another 3-4 months, where does that leave us?
Through the chair.
I can speak to that just in regards to the timeline, and Suzanne or Director LaFrance may want to add to it. We are on a bit of a tight timeline because the maximum requisition, like the bylaw, needs to be adopted prior to adoption of the financial plan, which is March 31st, 2024, in which to increase the requisition within this amount. The current contractor's contract ends end of August. So there is a requirement to have a new contractor in there by September 1st. There are a number of unknowns until staff are able to go out and do a procurement process. we don't know what the operating costs are going to be with that new contractor. So by increasing the requisition, we have that buffer in which to sign a contract. If we don't have that buffer, we may not be able to enter into a new contract with a management company of that site, which could impact the service dearly. So while we don't know how much operating is going to be required, we've rolled in $488,000. Again, increasing the maximum requisition limit does not mean that it's a requirement to raise that requisition amount. Any determination of taxation increase to the service will be undertaken as part of the normal budgeting process. But that provides that buffer, and Director LaFrance was looking over a 5-year period. So we're looking ahead and what the future impacts may be to operating and servicing that site based on the extensive community engagement that was done by staff. The survey was the one piece, but they certainly, they went into the areas, they did pop-ups, and they did extend the engagement as much as they could. Also with the fact that there was active wildfire happening in some of those areas, which did impact it, but they did extend that community engagement.
Okay. Director Demare?
Yeah, I concur with Lori, and the community engagement in Area A was pretty well nil, other than social media. And because of the wildfire, they never came out. If you look at the report, they were supposed to come out, they're supposed to come out, they're supposed to come out, cancel. And I've got a couple of suggestions. And one of them is, why do we need to go to the 5-year? Why can't we go 2-year? It's stated that if it'll take more staff time after the 2 years. And that way, we don't have to do that 486,000. We could do quite a bit less. That way, we really get into the engagement with our constituents. And I mean, that either that, or if you're going to do this for 5 years, get it down lower, and and maybe the electoral areas could top up some of it through our various funding streams that we have. To present this to the, if we approve this, there's going to be major comeback.
I'm going to go to the CAO for comment.
I think the reason we have to do this on a 5-year cycle is because that is on a 5-year financial plan. That's what we can put forward. As was mentioned, we need to go to the maximum in order to cover for that 5-year term. That doesn't mean year 1 is going to be that, and the taxes aren't going to go. So what happens if we go to a 2-year and then we go, oh, this isn't enough? We have to do this whole process again. So the amount of time for not even guaranteeing to increase it within that 2-year period, it's prudent to actually look to the future and have that all done in one process.
Yeah, I totally agree. But that process should have started a long time ago. Because right now we're at 100,000 and our requisition is only 63,000. That's it. And why wasn't it increased as we went through? So now we're going to do it all at once. Bang, here you go.
I agree. I think unfortunately we are where we're at right now,
Yeah.
and hindsight's 2020, but we really.
So there are options to modify it and kind of stage it a bit more like that 2-year plan, and do half of that funding. The other issue is we put it out that it goes out, and all these various proponents are going to look at that and say, this is what's going to be available, right? Which drives up the price.
I think we've already gone out. This is part of the issue that we've had. We went out, and unfortunately it wasn't exactly what we were anticipating receiving, which has then put us back further. We had hoped to be a little bit more ahead of where we're at. And I mean, we have a process for procurement that we would want and hope that people would propose a competitive rate. Obviously, we're hoping for more than one, so that we can pick and choose between the delivery of the correct service that we need for that area. It's not to say that there can't be some type of engagement or further discussion that goes into this. Last time when there was a discussion about what was going to be included in that total value, not all of the asks that were put forward in that survey were actually incorporated into the budget. The largest numbers were actually kept out because we understood that the cost was too prohibitive to include it. So the lesser amounts that were a little bit more reasonable, staff did include. So it wasn't like this is a wish list and we're going to be able to accommodate it all. I think it was very thoroughly reviewed and looking to try to reduce the impact to the taxpayer. And that's why only a small amount was added.
It was interesting because I did listen into the Lillooet district meeting. And one of the comments from the public was, when we did that survey, why wasn't there something in there saying something that you didn't want in the transfer station? So it was all about increasing, right?
I have, Director Stoner, we have to move on because we have a hard start in 2 minutes. So Director Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify two things. One, that we've received 2/3 consent, so we can move forward with the amended wording of the bylaw. And then the second portion that I'd like to clarify is that the actual rates set for the service area will not be established until the time of budget. Correct? So this is just establishing the maximum requisition, but we're not establishing the service level yet.
We're doing the 2024 budget deliberations.
Okay, Director Carlton.
And just so I understand it correctly, what is the outcome of us voting in favor and Lillooet voting against? Is adopted because it's our service. No, we don't know.
No, there is no impact. We can proceed and it will carry on.
So, is there a chance, will there be an opportunity to either reduce the services like the free store or added hours? That will come, I can talk about that at budget, or is it?
All of those items would be
All of those
included in the
items.
budget, so they could be deferred to a future year, maybe something else added, there's that conversation, but right now, all this is doing is ensuring that there is adequate funds to service this at some point in the future. Right now, we need to.
Because I'm really concerned about things like the animosity with metal going out and second businesses and that kind of thing. I'm worried that people that are bidding on this are going to see this great amount of money and then they're just going to go over that. And I'm worried about Lillooet not having a say on how much they're paying when it's just being overridden. And they really don't get a say. I just, I think that.
There has been.
But there was multiple engagements that were canceled.
Okay.
There was multiple.
So my recommendation would be that this conversation isn't over and it hasn't satisfied the need of this board to make this decision today. So I'm going to suggest that we defer this conversation to tomorrow when we continue this meeting, because that's what we're doing.
I like that idea. Thank you. Do you need a motion to that effect? We'll just carry on.
Tomorrow, we'll carry over. I think we can just, we're just doing it.
Yeah.
I am calling everything this open meeting. Sorry. Thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Or no, we'll see you tonight. All right. And 5-minute recess for everyone to stretch your leg.